Hey there, welcome to this episode of Coffee Solo, recorded on Friday, 27th of June, 2025. The time is 1 o'clock, straight up. 1 o'clock, well, it's not straight up noon, nor is it midnight, but 1 a.m. on the nose, on the dot. Episode 2025 06 2701. I'm going to guess nobody likes that numbering scheme, but nobody has made any comments, so I'm assuming it will be fine. You don't have to look for it by that number anyway, but it is the correct date, the first episode of the day. Usually the only, but we'll see. One of these days I'll get my audio production game back online. More so. Today's episode, What the Flick? What the Flick is something I've heard from a few people. Mostly they're Irish people, and they're being polite. You can also hear what the feck, but what the flick is like if there's kids around, or if there's especially if they're in a pub or something, and there are people that don't know or don't want to hear harsher language, so they tend to be a little bit more subdued. So what the flick, and some other people too. So it's a nice way to keep it clean, which is something I try to do more often. I think, and of course, I didn't even write this down. I did an outline for today. It's 1 a.m. Why not? I should try to remember some things. Very, very famously now, the President of the United States dropped the F-bomb twice. Once prior to boarding Marine One, so he could head off to the airport to go to somewhere in the Netherlands for the NATO summit. I don't remember where it was being held. And then at the NATO summit during a press conference also dropped the F-bomb. And I think they were actually providing people with pearls so they could clutch something. Pardon me. So what's the big deal? On the other hand, it's not really that difficult. He could have said, I don't know what they're flicking doing. But anyway, that's the way it is. That's the world we live in. The summary of today's episode, according to my plan. So if I'm going to do an outline, I can do a summary. If I don't do if I don't pick the title and I don't really have a real outline, if I just jot down a couple of things, then I don't know what the summary will be until later. But today, since my birthday on Saturday, that was the 21st, and of course the thing over Iran, which took place that same day, it has been absolute chaos in the news, in the world. What gives? What the flick? And the links as usual. I do have my affiliate link for the Nasal Fresh MD. You can tell, because my voice is not totally working, that I did not do it today. I probably should have, but I'm trying to see. I've talked about this before, and I'm not going to speak about it much. I'm trying to see how much I can get away with between uses and still have some sort of residual effects. So today was too long. I probably should have done it in the morning. Such is life. And of course, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, and the Buy Me an Update Monday, 5 minutes or less microcast, a quick rundown on the audio programs. I do not summarize this program. People just have to listen in. And any news and announcements, so you can check that out at buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo/posts. The URL is very similar to Ko-fi.com, where you are hearing this episode. Although I have to say I know I say exclusively of both the Buy Me an Update and the Coffee Solo episodes, available exclusively on their respective coffee-related websites. But I can still host the audio there, but I think I could build a feed of my audio programs and make them available from my own website, which one of these days I will actually deploy. So something to think about. Anyway, there you go. The outline begins thusly. I don't know if you've been encountering this. Every single person, mostly, I watch a lot of YouTube, so I'm not going to say like classic terrestrial radio or television broadcast, television network news. I don't really watch cable news channels. But a lot of commentary, a lot of, YouTube podcasters, which is not quite the same thing, I think, but a lot of people are suddenly experts. And we saw this during the pandemic. Everybody was an epidemiologist all of a sudden. Everybody was a virologist. Everybody understands the way the human immune system, immunologist even, the way the immune system works and natural immunity. How many times did you have COVID? 3 times, but I have natural immunity. More recently, everybody's a constitutional scholar and now military strategist. And don't forget that somewhere in there, people are also geriatric experts, can totally judge. And now, too, they're totally judging slurs and forgetfulness and gait. And now, of course, military strategist. And who knows what else? Global economy, we got it. Experts, everybody. So everybody has their opinion. Everybody's judging. Now, I've never been in the military, but I played someone on TV. Now, I certainly was adjacent. I mean, I was in the AFJROTC program. I was looking to go to the Air Force Academy, which I did not because my eyesight was going south quickly. And I was like, well, I really wanted to be a pilot. That was my thing, my whole life. I did go for an AFROTC scholarship though. So I figured, okay, I could still do something. I always enjoyed the military, from everything I learned about it, everything I do. And if there's one thing we picked up over time, just from talking to, the instructors and the stuff we learned in the coursework, just even in high school, it was that military engagements are complicated. They are sometimes complex. And even when they embedded journalists in Iraq for Desert Shield, we're embedding journalists so you can get reporting right from the field. That news was being crafted and maintained to give an impression. It's all propaganda at that point. But the important thing to realize is that the way things unfold in the moment, you're only seeing a snapshot of a section, a little teeny tiny facet on a huge gem that is sparkling in all directions, not in a good way. So it's amazing to me how quickly, because people have to build their content. I gotta get a YouTube video. I gotta make some content. Did you see the way he curled the corner of his mouth when he said obliterated? I gotta make a video. So there's such a rush to build yet another episode, to discuss yet another tiny little detail that somebody said the different thing over there. And I just think it's total chaos. When you get too close in, if you take think of a famous painting, Mona Lisa, whatever you like, if you zoom in so you can only see like a square inch, you don't even know what the picture is. And if you zoom in even closer, you don't even know it's a painting. I mean, you can maybe tell from the texture of the paints, but what is this? I don't even know what I'm looking at. So a lot of people are quick to judge, quick to comment, and it's getting almost insulting because I know that there are people, and of course there's a ton of ideology sprinkled in there, and it's really frustrating. And so I know people are getting their opinions from these other people who are just, reinforcing the confirmation bias and all this. So it's becoming sort of a nightmare. I honestly don't want to waste my time doing that. So every time I think, maybe sometimes I should talk about, political news of the day and whatnot, I really don't think that's a great idea. I just don't. So I was thinking of, making Coffee Solo because it has no topic constraints. It's not, Quaggling Sand is stories, FFS talk is what works, what doesn't, and what do we do about it? This doesn't have any sort of preconception. So I could talk about Trump or whoever. I could talk about AOC. I could talk about how New York City is going to be, and I totally spaced on his name. New York City is turning socialist. And now that's the way the entire, everybody's reading one primary. He hasn't been elected yet. One primary election win. Now, the good news is it was a ranked choice voting scheme. So hopefully we'll start to see that more. Yes, he's a democratic socialist. Not to be confused with a social democrat. So I think AOC is also identifies as a democratic socialist. I think FDR, purveyor of Social Security and social safety net programs. I believe he identified as a social democrat. So democratic socialist, social democrat, there is a difference. It is not subtle. But it's not ridiculous. But there is a difference. But I don't know that winning a primary in New York, which yes has a population, is it 10 million? That's the headline now. Oh, the Democrats they're totally changing into socialism. I honestly think, first of all, let me get his name just so I can say it correctly, or try to. Rise of the American Socialist. Zoran Mamdani. There we go. A far broader coalition than expected. So yeah, Zoran Mamdani. Okay. I've heard what he had to say. I think some of his ideas are pretty good. I think some of his ideas might be a little bit too far out. It's hard to say, but I think something that's interesting at the city level or locality, right? Maybe at a county level, but certainly at a city level, especially with so many people and such a galactically high cost of living, among the highest cost of living, among the most income disparity cities or regions, right? It's either at the top or near the top. So there are people that I heard some ratios today about normal income and basically a baseline cost of living, and it's something like 5 or 6 times a typical income. And then there are people that are making far below that, and it's ridiculous. He's talking about making public transit free, markets, community markets, like, is that the word they're using? Basically, you can go and get groceries at reduced prices or free, maybe. Basically extending a social safety net to the people in the city, in a city where it is particularly hard to survive for a lot of people. So this is just like a human factor. And I think something, I've talked about this a lot over the years. Personally, my personal opinion, at some point you have to, if you're just pondering the world, you have to think, okay, I like the way things are now, generally speaking, but in order to maintain the way things are, there have to be people. Like if everybody gets a virus, or everybody can't eat, or if nobody can afford shelter, or if people just run away, they go somewhere else, your city might suffer. I don't see 10 million people leaving tomorrow, but at some point you have to say, you know what, the whole reason we're doing this is so that people can live and have a reasonable quality of life. That's kind of, that's kind of humane. So it kind of bothers me that this is such a dramatic and scary thing. I have heard people say, oh, I don't want socialism. Biden's going to be too much of a socialist. I don't like socialism. And I said, aren't you collecting Social Security right now? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think people, and of course people are now talking about, oh, it's going to be like Russia. And Russia is now our best friend sometimes, depending on what day it is. So I just think that people are too wrapped up in what the word is and not what the intent is. Now, there are issues about his opinion on Israel, and then people conflate an opinion about Israel, the government, Israel, the leadership, Israel, the people and the place. And that's a very complicated thing, to be honest. And I don't even want to go down that road, but so not everyone is going to be ecstatic. But I think if you look at some of the core, especially the economic considerations for a city, I think it would be very different. And if you were going to stick to the definition of socialism, one of the core principles, socialism is not communism. They're all related, but socialism is essentially the means of production are owned by the state or the people, depending on how you're viewing things. So who owns the means of production? Communism, it's owned by the people. I think socialism, it can be owned by the state or the people. I can't remember. But I mean, that's when you're going strict, right? You're looking at, we're going to construct a socialist economy, a socialist society. Social democrats take some of the social safety net aspects and the public good So making sure your population can survive and has shelter and food, all the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's Maslow, right? So, yeah, social democrats view that in the framework of a democratic state. And then, really people are like, oh, but capitalism is going to win. Well, but capitalism shifts wealth. So there have to be regulations in place, and everybody wants to deregulate. When you deregulate a capitalist economy, power laws kick in. In other words, if I make the most money in whatever product category I'm dominating, then I will tend to continue to make more money because I can take more of my money and invest it back into my domination. So once you cross over a threshold, whatever it might be, you are now sort of self-sustaining, like a chain reaction. And I think it's very easy for people to believe, well, I want my chance to do that. And if you're a socialist, you can't have money and you can't get successful. That's not really how it works. I think socialists really tend to look at like, well, what about the people that are not making any money? So I just think it's a little bit too complicated to have it hashed out in the headlines, in the hyper ideological media, and the YouTubers that are just jumping in and they don't know what they're talking about. So, and then democratic socialists are leaning much more towards a socialist agenda. I don't believe they're moving away from capitalism as quickly as people believe, but I think they are aimed much more at the means of production question. So like, for example, because he made a big thing about free public transit, if public transit is subsidized, a social democrat might say, okay, everybody should be able to ride the bus. So if you don't have the money for it, you should get a subsidy. You should get a bus pass program. Maybe it's free for everybody. So we should subsidize the bus so that everybody can ride the bus. A democratic socialist might lean more towards the bus system should be owned by the city. In the case of a city democratic socialist, a mayor, so that we need to budget some money and we need to acquire or otherwise take control over so that we can set the prices. So we're not subsidizing, we're actually setting prices because we now own the means of production when it comes to public transit. So we own the whole process of the vehicle maintenance and transportation and hiring the workers and so on. So that's a little bit more tricky to pull off in an existing capitalist economy. So we'll see what happens. I think it'd be an interesting experiment, especially because of the cost of living there. If somebody was doing this in middle America, I think it would be a little bit more divisive, maybe a lot more. But I think it will be very interesting to watch how this unfolds in a place like New York with all eyes upon it. So speaking of New York, the NATO meetup was quite something. All manner of inside baseball, people talking behind backs and commenting on this or that, tosser. So I posted on my Blue Sky account. I hate Blue Sky, by the way. Taco still works. Tosser always chickens out. There were people making facial expressions. You could have lip readers like, oh, they're talking about him behind his back. You can see it in they're calling him a moron. Just behind the scenes stuff going on. And Trump still has no appreciation, to be honest, no appreciation for the invocation of Article 5 back on September 12th, 2001. The only time Article 5 has ever been invoked so far was for America, and all of our allies were on board in a post 9/11 universe. And he doesn't really have much appreciation for anything else. But I find it interesting. I was reading about some of the, leading up to the summit. The last time, was it the last time? Or the time before the last time? It was when Trump was, I think it was his first NATO summit in his first term. There was a monument to the Article 5 invocation, and it was made out of some steel from the World Trade Center site. So they made a monument, and he was going to be there to make a statement during the unveiling, the presentation. And of course, he turned it into a politicized message about himself, and of course, everybody has to pay more. And the paying more thing is probably fair. I'm not going to say, I honestly don't know what the breakdown is per country. I know it's supposed to be 2.5 or 3% of GDP. He wants it to go to 5%. I don't know if everybody's going to be able to make that. But the fact is, thanks to Bretton Woods and to our now, post World War II, America had the strongest and most capable deep water navy that could project strength, could project presence pretty much anywhere in the world, because our shipyards were never really in danger, and our production and our materials and so on, we never had any problems. Whereas a lot of Europe was not doing so well, parts of Asia were not doing so well. So we were able to project strength, and that meant in a post-Bretton Woods global economy, we could project our naval presence to protect shipping lanes and so on. So we sort of naturally continued our lead in the world, and NATO, of course, has been essential, but America just played a dominating role. I'm totally fine with that being reconsidered, but there's a quote, and I think I heard Scott Galloway say it, and I looked it up. Going to war. Let me see what it is. No. Yeah, I'm not going to be finding it. I think it's the only... No, it's not it either. Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, it's Winston Churchill, of course. There's only one thing worse than fighting with allies, and that is fighting without them. So yeah, his tendency to want to, bail out on NATO and stuff, I think is very troubling. It's short-sighted, and all the global economy stuff has been absolutely chaos, and it's sort of embarrassing, to be honest, but we'll see what happens. I continue to believe, now more than ever, that thinking local first is probably the way to go for the short term. It's a lot easier to get a grasp on things, to understand how systems are working or not working, to affect change and so on. I'm still trying to figure out how best to do that here in Vegas. It is a very odd place when I compare it to, say, Silicon Valley, where I spent many years. Though according to some, this is the next Silicon Valley, and I'm afraid I do not agree, not at all. There's just this people don't get it here. Now, when I was in Silicon Valley, granted only from 1993, so right at the end of the Bush 41 recession, I was just out of college, and Silicon Valley was just about to kind of go on an upswing, the dot-com boom, as they called it. I think there was a lot of optimism. There was a lot of irrational optimism, irrational exuberance. But I found back then, and I was in Silicon Valley from 1993 to 2001. I took a little break, moved back, did my second tour of duty at Silicon Valley, 2005 to 2013. And that was very different too. But I found that, and I don't know if it's something in the water or in the air, but people are just generally more in tune. They're more interested in what's going on. They're more attentive to possibilities. They're listening more closely when there's an opportunity floating around in the air. Right? And I just find here in Vegas, I just don't get that sense. I don't get the people are doing their thing. And if you can help them, they will talk to you. But if you ask them for something, I am too busy for that. And it's very difficult to get people to respond and so on. I'm not sure how this impacts this notion that this is going to be the next Silicon Valley and all that, but that this is a global innovation hub, and this will be a strong entrepreneurial region. Now, any region can have entrepreneurs. I'm not going to say that there's none. It's very easy to say there's nothing going on here. And that's like a dramatic oversimplification. So the peak is not as high. The graph is not as wide. There aren't as many nodes, but there are certainly entrepreneurs here. Now, the other problem is everybody's thinking, okay, a startup is a tech company. And I'm like, man, I think if you set yourself up for that, it's like, I have an impossible dream. Okay, but if you only aim at the impossible dream, you may be disappointed. If you have a dream and it might lead to something that's ridiculous and impossible, but you can have the first dream that gets you somewhat to the second dream and so on. So factor the problem. And I just think setting this goal on we're going to be the next Silicon Valley. we're a global innovation hub. I think, and I've said this many times in the Cafe Genius audio program, Impresarios audio program. I think you have to look at what you got, look around, and say, you know what, we can make something better out of what we have. Hence the Be a Better Las Vegas. That's what I've been pushing. But I think if you just say, oh, startup equals tech company, first of all, they want to be a biology, biomedical research hub as well. So innovation in biomedical sciences. Okay, maybe. The Hollywood 2.0 thing looks like it might be, it has a bit of a hill to climb. This is the second session. So 2 years ago, didn't get through this time, didn't get through. It'll be another 2 years unless there's a special legislative session. Another 2 years before there's another opportunity for the tax incentives or tax breaks and other incentives to get a Hollywood 2.0 effort going here. Hey, why don't you just make it something in Vegas? Why does it have to be Hollywood 2.0? Why does it have to be the next Silicon Valley? So yeah, Be a Better Vegas. It will be interesting to see what happens between now and 2 years from now when our legislature is back in session. I think it's in February 2027. So we'll see what happens unless there's a special session. But there's this belief that, we'll just take some shortcuts and we'll get to this other, we'll just be like somewhere else. And I think it's interesting because the fun economy here is actually, it's taken a dip. Global tourism is a little bit off, especially. It's probably not off in other parts of the world, but people are not coming to Vegas, probably not coming to the United States as much as they were. I think, was it April or May? It was either April or May or both that were down by 100,000 people. That's a lot. The total global tourism for the total annual tourism for 2024, total 41.7. It's 41.7. I think it's 41.7. 41 plus million people visited Vegas. So if you knock off 100,000 every month, now if you knock off 100,000 and then another 100,000, so you knock off 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, that's bad. But if we're just down by 100, and so they're saying, I think it was 6%. Don't get me wrong, that's not good news. But if people are coming here for the fun economy, I've said this many times, if you're going to put such a strong economic driver at risk through gentrification, and I did a whole episode of Impresarios about Austin and its transition from its base culture to the tech scene, priced everybody out. They didn't have a good transit system, so people who were working in the restaurants on 6th Avenue, people that were part of their version of a fun economy, although that's trademarked now, so they can't do that. But the people that were enabling the keep it weird notion of Austin, they couldn't actually live there. And that happens so much in Silicon Valley. So to me, that's not a good place to be, especially if you can't get around. So if you don't have a transit system in place, if you don't have housing, you price people out, they can't live. Well, who's going to work? Robots? So I continue to be concerned. And my episode of Impresarios, which I'll record later in the morning, so recording 27 June at some time, is about a study that has been published. I think it was published earlier this month. It's another version of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Vegas is strong. The State of the Union is strong. Getting some water. So yeah, I read the report as I'm wont to do before I comment on it. It's the same hand waving. If you're going to report on an ecosystem, that's great. But if you're trying to drive an ecosystem in a different direction, you can say, hey, we have a couple of the things that seem like it's heading in the right direction. Or you can say, here's what we expect to have if we continue in the quote unquote correct direction. How many of those things do we have? So the recommendations part of the report is thin, better communication, access to capital. It's the same stuff. There's the same list of ESOs, entrepreneurial support organizations. Basically, they grasp at the same straws every time. They mention the same people. It's always the same people. It's always the same startups. It's always the same meetups and resources. It's not a true asset map, but if it were an asset map, someone at some point would have to say, is this everything? Because this is the same list you had last time. Like, where is the growth? And they do have a very telling bar chart about investment year over year. It's not good. It's dropped off precipitously in 2023 and 2024. So yeah, we'll see, because 2025 cannot possibly get better. I mean, not a lot, if at all. So, but for my uses, I'm searching for board members to fill in some empty seats at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, ironically, but specifically named for the innovation hub that is the fantasy version of Greater Vegas. The board member search continues. I'm profoundly disappointed in my LinkedIn network and the inability of most people I know, here in Vegas especially, to be responsive in any way. It boggles the mind, but when it comes to people here in Vegas, I believe this is one of the things that actually prevents the whole global innovation hub from being taken really seriously, from being really plausible. There are other factors, but solipsism is a big one, and it's not a good one. And again, people are so wrapped up. If you meet someone and they want something from you, and you are of a personal ilk that you tend to want to help other people on the long tail, right? Oh, if I help you today, you might help me tomorrow. Yeah, they're not going to, unless you get lucky and you meet someone of that ilk, right? But for the most part, people I meet around here, the vast majority are going to say, oh, yeah, I'll get back to you. That's all I'm going to say about that. You did not ask. I'm sure you didn't, but if you did, my leg continues to improve. My ankle is a little bit unstable, but it's getting way better. It's coming along nicely. I walk less and less with the cane that I was. It's been so in 5.5 hours. It will be 24 days to the hour. I'm sorry, 34. 34 days to the hour since I had my mishap with the stairs. It's 4 stairs, not 3. On that first day, this confirmed that I was not standing on a broken leg. I was able to stand on the one leg briefly, but getting around, I was so glad I had that cane. It was impossible to, forget about twisting. That was like, I thought I would fall over, right? So having a cane to balance, take some of the load if I needed to go up and down the steps coming into and out of the building, if I needed to step off a curb to walk over to the grocery store after a couple days. The first couple days was pretty limited mobility. I did walk to urgent care 1 hour after. So that's, again, I knew I was not too bad off. I'm just retelling some of the story here if you didn't remember. But yeah, over the past 34 days, I've just kind of moved. No real, no convalescing. And every day over day, improvement. And so the past week, it's probably been a week. So since last Friday, just reducing the cane use, walking longer and longer distances, carrying things. Ooh, look at me carrying stuff. No, carrying trash to the dumpster, carrying boxes to the recycle bin. So, for a while it was like, I got to use one hand because I got to have the cane and whatnot. So now that I have both hands available, I just have the cane at the ready. I can pretty much walk. I'm not walking super fast, but I am walking with less of a limp. So a little bit closer to a normal gait and less painful and all that. So all good things. So if you were wondering, coming along nicely. Could have been much worse. I also could have navigated those stairs better. So, but we're getting there. It's good. And I think finally, since we're coming up on, it's 1:42 now. Wait, the times don't match up. Yes, because I had to pause and turn off my air conditioner because it makes too much noise when I'm recording. I did receive my renewed driver's license on Thursday. So 1 week since I submitted the online renewal. And I think this is, I renewed my license. So that's a big celebration. But I think that the thing I want to point out, it was a real ID. I had gotten a real ID the last time I renewed it. And it is again. So I have my real ID. Now, one of the things about real ID is that it has to expire more frequently. I think when I had my Arizona driver's license the last time, which would have been 2001, when I moved back, I think they were good for like 20 years or something crazy. So now Real ID, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it expires like in 4 years or 5 years or something. So they have a cap on the number of years it's valid. And I think they require a particular type of document. So it has to be either a birth certificate or a passport. I don't even know if it can be a passport, but I find it interesting. And of course, this year they made a big deal because if you're going to travel, you got to have a Real ID or maybe something else. And of course, they start slipping the schedule because, total turmoil at the airport. And, side note, the power of crowds is something that people need to remember. We're seeing that in LA a little bit. Something to think about. So the Real ID is supposed to expire over shorter intervals, but I used my birth certificate to get a couple years ago. Birth certificate never expires. I did not have to provide it again. Sorry, I had to pause and get all the water there. I was getting dried out. So I did not have to provide my birth certificate again to renew my license. I did it online. If you remember last time, I said I was not going to be able to do it online. It said I was missing some digital image or something. But whatever happened as my expiration date approached, there I am, able to renew. Okay. So I use my birth certificate, a document which never expires, to obtain a Real ID, which needs to expire sooner. So that was a few years ago. Then, without re-providing my birth certificate, I was able to get a renewed Real ID, and they didn't take my new picture because I didn't go there. So it has the same exact picture. Are you following along with this? So I didn't provide any new or re-verified identification, and I didn't provide a new photograph. So for all practical purposes, I have exactly the same identification document, my Real ID driver's license. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. So I just wanted to point that out. When I went, this is like a corollary, where I live, they're putting in some new, I guess they're RFID. They look like Mayfair key fobs. I think I have a few somewhere. I got to check and see what's going on. But I got one today because they wanted to see a valid ID, even though they know me, even though they know where I live. We got to see a valid ID. I said, I got my license today, the renewed one. So I had it still in the envelope. I said, here it is. So she said, okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you your fob. You have to sign for it. Then you have to write a guest PIN code next to your signature. And so I'm looking at this. It looks like a sign-up sheet for everybody. So there's everybody's name with signatures for people who have come and pick it up. I said, I'm going to write a PIN code, but everybody can see it. She's like, yeah, but we have to put it into the system. I said, right, but I'm writing a PIN code so that everybody can see it. And she's like, well, we got to put it in the system. So she wasn't picking up what I was putting down. And so it's this kind of stuff where you're like, you didn't re-verify that I'm still alive, that I'm still the same person to get my driver's license. Do you understand that you shouldn't be writing, if this is a PIN code, anybody can use the PIN code. Now, this is not a big deal. It just opens a gate. So who cares, right? When they're going to send out some software invite next week, I guess, and I'm just going to reset the PIN anyway. So, who cares? But, because I'll just say, I forgot what it was. Can I reset it? But I think the notion of security theater is getting ridiculous. It is only becoming more and more apparent. People have no idea how security works, how PII, personally identifying information, how that works, when they can share it. I'll end with this. One time, this was many years ago, I was visiting my parents in Phoenix. I tried to use my ATM Visa card, my debit card, at might have been a Circle K, a convenience store near the light rail station, which was near the airport, because I needed to take the light rail and then the bus to my parents' house. That's a long story for another time. Anyway, so couldn't get picked up. So I was like, I'll just take the light rail. It's a chill ride through downtown. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to get some water. My card got declined. I was like, what's going on here? So I get to my parents' house. I call my bank, credit union, and the person I call now, hello, yes, okay. Can you verify that your email address is, and she reads my email address. And then she did another thing. I'm like, why are you telling me this personal identifying information? I said, put your supervisor on. So I said, this is what happened. And they were like, oh, okay. I said, yeah, you're not supposed to do that. Yes, I know. So it boggles the mind that people really, and then, oh, okay, one last one. The Monday morning, Amazon, I've mentioned I'm an Amazon Vine reviewer. Okay, so I get tons and tons of deliveries. So there's a delivery scheduled between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. Yeah. Why is this? So my phone rings at 6:30 in the morning. It says Amazon support, but who knows? Hi there, you're supposed to get a package and the carrier's there and he can't get in and your instructions are wrong. And I'm like, no, they're not. Well, he's not able to get in, so I'm just wondering if you can give us some alternate instructions or tell us where you'd like to leave the package. And he said, don't leave the package. Come after the... Like, why do you have to deliver a package at 6:30 in the morning? This is ridiculous. This happens every time. Well, if you can just give me your name, I'll do... And of course, I'm half asleep, so I said, what I should have said is, you're calling me. I don't know who you are. This could be... well, you can check our caller ID. Now, you can spoof caller ID. So people make these simplifying assumptions they don't understand. Like if you're going to call me, the next thing would have been, can you give us the gate code? That's stupid. So just ridiculous. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm a little bit concerned. My voice is already breaking up a little bit. I need to have a hot beverage. So I'm going to leave it there, but thanks for listening again to Coffee Solo. The cover art is going to be a bunch of people shrugging because what the flick? And that's all I know. All right. Thanks for listening. And until next time, America.